I am here to introduce Jerry Mitchell, who will remind us that Kern is really a cardiologist at heart, pun intended. Jerry came here as a medical student in 1950. He spent 4.5 years at the NIH and returned to the campus in 1962. He has been the principal investigator of one of the longest running, if not the longest running, NIH program projects entitled Response and Adaptation to Exercise, starting in 1966 and funded for 41 years. Jerry.
As Dr. Selden said, Kern was a medical student here, and he finished medical school at the age of 22, when most of us are going off to college. And also in his junior year, he made AOA, which is the Phi Beta Kappa of medical school, and was the highest ranking student. Now, I met Kern in the fall of 1952. He was working with Dr. Carlton Chapman, who had been my mentor, and this young-looking man walked into my lab. I'd just gotten back here. He looked like a high school student with a bucket of the ugliest fish I've ever seen. And Kern was working on the Pacific hagfish with Dr. Chapman, and he published a paper which was an important contribution entitled The Circulatory Control in the Hagfish. And this gave us a much better understanding of how the heart is regulated. Also, if you read this paper, you will see that the cardiovascular anatomy and physiology of the hagfish is very strong evidence against intelligent design. After graduation, Kern did his training in internal medicine at Bellevue Hospital in New York and at Parkland Hospital here in Dallas. Now, in 1966, he started a cardiology fellowship, again with Dr. Chapman. Well, Chapman suddenly left, and Kern was stuck with me. Now, this was extremely unfortunate for me because Kern was the best postdoctoral fellow I've had in 46 years. Now, I must admit or confess that my initial thoughts weren't that good. He didn't seem to be working very hard. You don't want to call somebody lazy, but he wasn't jumping around like most fellows I'd seen. Then I looked at him a little closer, and in the lab there was no Brownian or random motion. Everything was carefully planned, no wasted movements. He carefully planned his experiments, efficiently performed them, wrote the papers, and published them. Very easy for me. I had to just look over the papers to at least get my name on the manuscripts. After his cardiology fellowship, Kern got a special research grant to spend 2 years at the prestigious Cambridge University in England. Now, Kern went there to develop a heart technique which would last for more than a few hours, at least last for weeks to months. And he worked with Dame Honor Fell, who was an organ culture specialist. Now, she had cultured fetal livers, kidneys, and spleens, all these organs that don't do anything. But she never had cultured a heart, a really working, important organ. Now, Kern was the first one to do this. Kern was able to culture the beating fetal heart, and he studied the responses to many interventions. Now, this research work only lasted 2 years, but it was so well accomplished and complete that he was invited to submit a thesis and receive a PhD from prestigious Cambridge University. Now, the gown and the funny hat, maybe some of you all saw a while ago, the funny hat or bonnet that Kern wears at graduation signifies that he has a PhD from Cambridge. Now, he won't be wearing that hat at Southwestern Medical Foundation, and nobody will know he's a PhD from Cambridge. So when I was recently in Cambridge, I brought him a gimme cap that he'll be able to wear at Southwestern Medical Foundation. Now, so in 6 years, Kern had trained in medicine, cardiology, and gotten a PhD from Cambridge. That's pretty amazing. And as Dr. Selden mentioned, he joined the faculty in 1970. He got tenure in 1 year, full professorship in 5 years, and dean of the graduate school in 6 years. Now, I can't keep using the word amazing, so I looked up in the thesaurus such words as astonishing, phenomenal, or as my grandkids would say, awesome. Now, he started his own laboratory utilizing the fetal heart preparation he had developed, and this was extremely productive from 1970 to 1987 when he closed his laboratory. His research contributions are known worldwide. Now, Kern also maintained an interest in clinical research, and this is now called translational research. And Kern took the diving reflex, which we talk to medical schools, to the bedside. Now, the diving reflex is a reflex that's in ducks and seals that when they go underwater, their heart markedly slows to conserve energy. Now, this diving reflex has been shown to be due to two things: cold water on the nose and holding your breath. Well, that's still present in us. If you go home and hold your breath and stick your face in cold water and take your pulse, your heart rate will go down. Now, Kern wondered, would this happen also when people were exercising or when your heart rate was elevated? Now, there were no IRBs, and I must say that informed consent was somewhat loose. The way you would do an experiment was to first do it on yourself and then do it on 5 or 6 of your best friends that you could talk into doing it. So Kern put a pan of ice water on the handlebars of a bicycle, started pedaling himself, got his heart rate up, held his breath, stuck his head in cold water, and his heart rate slowed. Then he did it in 5 other people and wrote it up. Now, Kern thought this method could be used to treat patients with supraventricular tachycardia, a rather common abnormality which can cause a lot of symptoms. Now, the house staff in the ER at Parkland were very skeptical when Kern and Jim Atkins, who was one of our fellows, brought a pan of ice water to treat a patient. This was before waterboarding. The method worked and is frequently used today. Now, Kern also was on many study sections, editorial boards. He was elected to many important basic and clinical research organizations. And I'd say that Kern's career in research was outstanding. Now, this is using NIH terminology, where outstanding is much better than excellent. Outstanding gets funded, excellent doesn't get funded. So, one last thing I'd like to say is that another mark of an investigator is how he treats his fellows. Kern not only helped them in their careers, but made them members of the family. An example of this is Dr. Stan Cree, who came from the state of Washington with his wife, Candy, just for this occasion. So I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to speak and give me the opportunity to reminisce about Kern's early career. Thank you.
I have the pleasure of introducing 2 individuals who will discuss Kern's time as a dean, both of the graduate school and the medical school. Former Dean Bill Neves is a friend to many in this audience. He is a native of Spur, Texas, which is slightly smaller than the town in which Kern was brought up. He graduated in a class of 24 people from Spur High School. He was in the upper part of the class. He left there and went to Harvard, where he graduated in 1966 magna cum laude, which is actually something that has been done by every member of the Spur class who went to Harvard. He was admitted to Harvard Medical School and halfway through decided he wanted to be a PhD, and instead of getting an MD degree, he got a PhD in anatomy with great distinction. Bill's scientific interest developed along the way of andrology. He is clearly the singular expert in the world on the sex life of the hyena, which I'll tell you is one thread of Bill and Kern. Kern had his hagfish, Bill had his hyena. He won even the Young Andrologist Award, which is an award many young men aspire to, in 1983. Bill was on the faculty of UT Southwestern from 1972 to 2000. He started in cell biology, rose to be a professor, then became dean of the graduate school, and subsequently, after 8 years in that role, dean of the medical school for 12 years. To say Bill was a beloved member of the faculty is surely an understatement. He left here in the year 2000 to go to the Stowers Institute in Kansas City, and he has been president, CEO there, and more recently president of the Stowers Institute. This is a remarkable organization that has flourished under his leadership. Bill is an exceptional person and knows Kern well. They had interactions for over 2 decades. Bill is an avid outdoorsman, a fisherman, a hunter, a tracker, but most importantly, a wonderful person and a dean. The interactions of Kern Wildenthal and Bill Neves over the years led to many of the great successes that we enjoy here today. Bill will give us a few comments about these interactions and maybe even tell 1 or 2 stories. After that, Leah Hurley, the Vice President for Legal Affairs, who's been here for a number of years, is going to present some remarks from Ms. Abby Freeman, who is Vice President for Human Services. I might mention 1 or 2 things about Leah. Leah started out with a degree in communications and subsequently had a degree in hearing and speech, and after losing those skills, got her lawyer degree and has been here as an outstanding member of the faculty and administration for 17 years. Leah will make a few comments after Bill. Dr. Neves?